Chosen one, the spiritual backlash has officially reached its target. Someone who spent years plotting your destruction just watched their malice backfire in the most public way imaginable. The spiritual truth is undeniable. They collapsed at an event after doing this ritual. People are finding out what they've been doing. This is the revelation of your divine backing. You were never losing ground. You were being shielded while the trap consumed its architect. Before any of this became visible, before any of it became undeniable, something in you was already picking it up. Some part of you, rooted at the deepest level of who you are, was detecting a frequency that the people around you could not sense. There was a moment. It may have come gradually, or it may have arrived in a single sharp instant when something in your gut shifted. When you looked at a certain person and something in you went quiet, in a way that felt exactly like a warning. When situations that should have felt ordinary started carrying an uncomfortable weight you could not name. When you would surface from sleep some mornings feeling a heaviness that had no logical explanation. That was not anxiety spiraling. That was not your imagination manufacturing problems. That was your spiritual discernment operating at precisely the level it was designed to operate. Your gift was sounding a very specific alarm about a very specific threat that was already being assembled in the dark. The same gift that was sounding the alarm in you was also visible to the people who were planning to come against you. They could sense it radiating from your life. And that gift, the very thing that existed to protect and alert you, was precisely the reason you became a target. They wanted what you carry. They had been watching it for a long time. And what they saw in you made them feel something that eventually curdled into something dangerous. Remember this point, because we are coming back to it at the close, and when we do, everything in between is going to make a different kind of sense. What they wanted most was the very thing they could never have, and that knowledge, living inside someone who already lacked the spiritual authority to walk in it legitimately, made them reckless. It made them willing to go to lengths that most people would never consider. It made them dangerous in the specific, escalating way that envy becomes dangerous when it has been left unchecked long enough to become something far worse than envy. What they did not know, what their jealousy made completely invisible to them, was this. The thing they were trying to take was also the thing protecting you from every move they made to take it. Hold that truth. We are just getting started. You need to understand who you were actually dealing with, and you need to understand it clearly. This was not a stranger operating from a distance. The most dangerous kind of opposition never arrives from people who do not know you. It arrives from people who do, people who were given access, people who sat close enough and long enough to study you, to understand what you were building, to know which of your relationships were load-bearing, which of your dreams were most precious, and therefore which ones would cause the most damage if they were disrupted. You let this person in. Maybe you called them family, maybe you called them a close friend, maybe the connection was romantic, communal, or professional, but they were inside your circle, and while presenting themselves as close to you, they were simultaneously functioning as an adversary, both things at once, the warmth and the betrayal sharing the same face. What was driving all of it? Jealousy. But do not let that word feel small. This was not the passing envy most people experience and release. This was the consuming kind, the kind that compounds over time, adding a new layer every single time something good enters your life. Every door that opened for you registered in them as a door closing on themselves. Every celebration of yours became a quiet fury in them. Every new level you stepped into widened the gap between who they were and who they were watching you become, and that gap was something they could not tolerate. At some point, the jealousy shifted into intention. Wishing things were different was no longer enough. The decision was made that if reaching your level was not possible, pulling you down to theirs was the alternative plan, and from that decision, the planning began. The quiet sabotage came first, the whispers, the strategic rumors, the slow poisoning of select relationships, the interference designed to create confusion around your name and your character. When none of that stopped your movement, the conclusion was reached that ordinary interference was no longer sufficient. Something more powerful was needed, something that could reach you in the unseen realm, because everything attempted in the visible realm had failed to land. So the decision was made to pursue a level of power that was never legitimately theirs to access. And that one decision set the entire chain in motion that ended with a collapse at a gathering they organized, in front of people they recruited, during a ritual they believed would finally seal your defeat. Who they recruited and what they built together is what we need to look at next. Understanding the full scope of what was assembled against you is not about making you feel overwhelmed. It is about making you feel something far more useful. When you understand how much had to be organized just to attempt to take you down, you will understand exactly how significant what you carry actually is. Nobody builds a coordinated operation against something insignificant. Nobody recruits multiple participants, pools serious resources, brings in outside practitioners, and commits sustained energy to defeating someone who does not represent a real and substantial threat to what they are trying to protect or gain. The size of the opposition assembled against you is a direct measure of your significance, and what was assembled against you was not small. If this resonates with your inner knowing, hype this video to help fellow chosen ones find their way here. There was an authority figure at the center of it. Someone with standing, with influence, with access to the kind of resources and social leverage that most people do not have. This person either led the operation or was drawn into it by someone skilled enough in manipulation to make them believe the goal was worth the risk. Either way, their authority was being actively aimed at your life. Beyond that authority figure, there was at least one person who presented themselves publicly as neutral or even supportive of you. Someone who appeared to have no involvement in any of it, but they were inside the agreement. They had consented to the goal. They were already treating your defeat as a certainty and celebrating something that had not yet arrived, because the confidence of this group in what they were building had reached the point of premature victory. And then there was the outside help. What was being assembled was not limited to the scheming of human minds. A practitioner was brought in, someone who trades in dark spiritual work, who was sought out and compensated to do what the people organizing this were not skilled enough to do on their own. Real resources were exchanged. Real effort was extended. The investment behind this operation tells you everything about how seriously the people behind it took what you carry. Now here is what they were specifically aiming at, because this was not random interference. Your significant bonds were targeted first, because an isolated chosen one is far more vulnerable than a connected one. Every important relationship in your life, every partnership, every alliance, every bond that gave you strength, those were the structures they wanted to bring down before anything else. Your spiritual discernment was targeted second, and it was targeted deliberately because they understood that a chosen one, operating with full clarity, is effectively impossible to reach. If they could cloud your ability to perceive accurately, they could operate without your inner alarm system catching what they were doing. They needed you confused and doubting yourself far more than they needed you struggling materially. And beneath all of it, your inheritance was the ultimate target. Not just your present circumstances, but your legacy, the generational wealth, the destiny, the long-term impact that was supposed to flow through you into everything you would build. That is what they were ultimately trying to intercept. Chosen ones, they never expected this, and they really didn't expect us to keep talking. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels disappearing, videos pulled, voices scrubbed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us. But we will not give up our voice, and now we have something they truly can't silence. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. Join Destiny Engine and you're supporting your favorite channels while leveling up yourself at the same time. It's a 360 win. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicities stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones. Press play. That's all. For $7, you switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. At some point in the escalation, there was a warning. The universe does not allow people to walk blindly into their own spiritual destruction without offering them an exit first. There is always a moment, sometimes more than one, where something communicates clearly enough that even a person operating from ego and jealousy can feel it, a moment where the signal is unmistakable. Stop, because what you are building is going to cost you in ways you cannot afford. That warning came, and they ignored it. The ego does not know how to process the possibility of being wrong after committing this deeply. Stopping would have meant accepting that you were beyond their reach. It would have meant absorbing the full loss of everything already invested in the operation. Ego does not operate that way. Ego reframes the problem as insufficient execution, rather than a fundamentally flawed goal. Ego says the only solution is to go further, so they escalated. Every failed attempt became a reason to try harder rather than a reason to stop. Every barrier they encountered was reinterpreted as insufficient effort rather than incontrovertible evidence that what they were aiming at was protected. The weight of their own investment kept pulling them forward into increasingly serious territory. Some of the people in their orbit started feeling that something was wrong, not with you but with the operation itself. Dark forces, once invited in and fed with genuine sustained intention, do not stay neatly confined to the intended target. They expand. They make themselves felt in the spaces of the people who summoned them. And the people who were adjacent to this operation started feeling the weight of something they had not signed up for when they first agreed to participate. Some of them quietly pulled back. Some of them asked questions that were not answered directly. The energy in that circle was no longer just human malice. Something else had moved in, and the person driving all of it was too consumed by the goal to notice what was shifting in the space immediately around them. Those unsettled people, that strange heaviness, the way even committed participants were beginning to feel like something had already gone sideways. Every single one of those signals was an off-ramp that went unused. So they planned the gathering, they committed to the final move, and what had been positioned and waiting for them arrived exactly on schedule. While all of that was being assembled in darkness, you were healing. Let that land fully. While real resources and real intention and real spiritual effort were being directed at your destruction, you were quietly, sometimes painfully, but always moving forward, becoming more of who you were created to be. You were healing from wounds that needed to close before you could carry what was coming. You were developing your spiritual sensitivity in ways that looked like struggle from the outside and felt like survival from the inside, but were actually functioning as preparation. You were deepening the foundation of your life in ways that would need to be exactly that solid to hold the weight of what was being prepared for you. Here is the specific thing about your healing that connects directly to what happened at that event. Every layer of yourself you recovered made you harder to reach with dark intention. Every piece of your authentic identity that came back online raised the frequency you operate on to a level where interference becomes more difficult to attach, more difficult to sustain, and more likely to reflect back at its source rather than penetrate. You were not just surviving, you were becoming more immune without even realizing that is exactly what was happening. There is something else that was occurring during this season that deserves to be named clearly. When the people behind this operation attempted to monitor your life, to project into your space, to observe your movements, and gather intelligence on your vulnerabilities so their plan could be calibrated to what would hurt you most, they were not arriving into empty spiritual territory. Something was already there at the perimeter of your life. Your ancestral protection was already on post, already alert, already aware of what was being assembled and from which direction it was approaching. Every time they attempted to get close enough to surveil your life, they were running into something ancient and unmovable that they could not see, could not identify, and could not get through. They believed their surveillance was working. They believed they were gathering accurate intelligence about you. What they were actually doing was announcing themselves to a protective force that was now fully aware of their presence, their method, their goal, and their timeline. By the time the gathering was planned, your protection already knew it was coming. A gathering was organized. From the outside it may have had the appearance of a celebration or a social event, but underneath the surface presentation, this was the culmination of everything that had been built. Every escalation, every recruited participant, every resource that had been invested, all of it was channeling toward what happened that night. The atmosphere at that gathering was already contaminated before the ritual began, not because of you, but because of what the people who organized it had been feeding leading up to it. The practitioner was present, the authority figure was present, the person who had been quietly celebrating your anticipated defeat was present. Everyone who had agreed to participate in the goal was assembled in one place for what they believed would be the decisive action. Premature celebration was already in the air. The tone of the gathering was victory before delivery, congratulations before completion. The confidence they had built in their operation had reached a level of arrogance that made them careless. They were already treating what they intended to do as accomplished. They were already speaking about you as though your defeat was behind them rather than ahead of them. And then the ritual began. The directed energy started moving. The intention was launched. Everything that had been carefully aimed and charged with the full weight of their combined malice was put into motion. What happened next was not what any of them had planned for. The protection already stationed at the perimeter of your life did not wait passively for what was being sent. It moved to meet it. Ancient authority does not sit still when a chosen bloodline is under coordinated attack. It activates with a force proportional to what is being launched, intercepts what was sent before it can reach its intended target, and returns it along the exact path it traveled, carrying everything it accumulated on the way. The energy that had been aimed at you turned around. It moved back through that gathering with a speed that nobody present was prepared to absorb, and someone significant in that space, someone who was not peripheral to what was happening but central to it, went down, not spiritually, in some abstract sense, physically, visibly, in front of the very people who had assembled to witness your defeat. One of their own collapsed. The premature celebration ended in an instant. The confident atmosphere shattered. What had been a coordinated operation became a scene of confusion and fear, with people scrambling to explain something that their prepared explanations could not cover. Someone may have needed to be carried. Someone may have needed emergency attention. The specific details of those moments are less important than what those moments produced in the people who witnessed them. Witnesses with no good explanation for what they saw. Witnesses who now carry the weight of having been present for something that cannot be cleanly accounted for. Witnesses, and witnesses who are right now talking. The speed of what happened matters. It tells you something about the level of your coverage that no amount of second-hand belief could ever communicate as clearly. When a chosen one who is genuinely protected is attacked, the return does not arrive slowly over a long arc of time. It comes back fast, and it comes back suddenly, because the force responding to the attack is not passive. It does not simply absorb impact and neutralize it. It actively engages, redirects, and returns what was sent with precision and with speed. This operation had been built over a long period of escalating intensity. Multiple layers of dark intention were stacked inside it, and all of it came back in a single gathering, in the span of one event, like a dam breaking, all of it, simultaneously, to the people who generated it. That kind of instantaneous total return is the signature of divine intervention, not slow spiritual consequence operating over years. Human-level consequence takes time, But what you watched unfold, the way the backfire arrived sudden and complete, is the fingerprint of something operating at a level above human timing, and the weight of what came back on them is not disproportionate. Divine justice does not overshoot and does not fall short. What returned to them was exactly proportional to what they assembled and launched, no more, no less, precisely the weight of what they committed to doing, landing on the people who committed to it. Every person at that gathering who contributed their energy, their agreement, their presence, their resources to what was happening is carrying a portion of what came back. The return did not land only on the one who fell. It traveled through every connection in the operation, and each of those people is now living through their own version of the aftermath. They designed everything to stay hidden. Every layer of this operation was constructed with concealment built into it. The gatherings were not publicly announced. The financial exchanges with the practitioner were structured to be deniable. The participants were coached on maintaining cover stories. Plausible explanations were prepared in advance for every element of what was happening. But the collapse at the gathering destroyed the one thing that all that preparation could not rebuild. It created witnesses who did not consent to witnessing what they actually witnessed. You cannot have a ritual gathering where someone collapses under circumstances that cannot be explained by anything ordinary, where the energy in the space turns visibly wrong in a matter of moments, where people who were confidently participating watch something go sideways in a way that defies the logic of the scenario they were told they were attending, and then expect all of those witnesses to hold coordinated silence forever. The conversations are happening right now. People who were present are processing what they saw, and they are processing it out loud, in private conversations, with people they trust. The picture assembling itself through those conversations looks nothing like the image the person at the center of this spent so much effort constructing. The gap between the presented image and the actual conduct is simply too wide to paper over now. Your name is in conversations you are not part of, and the version of you in those conversations is not the version this person tried to build. The truth about who you are and what was actually being done to you is the version that is spreading now. Because the collapse was not the only thing witnesses observed, they also observed the target of all that organized malice, still standing, still moving, still untouched. You are the evidence. Your continued progress is the testimony, and the formal accountability, whether civic, legal, or institutional, is either already in motion or approaching. When the level of organized harmful intent reaches the degree it reached in this operation, formal consequences tend to arrive for everyone involved. The practitioner who was paid, the authority figure who lent their standing to the operation, the person who appeared neutral while participating actively. Every significant participant is now a point of exposure for every other significant participant, because when things start unraveling, people start pointing in every direction except at themselves. The secrecy cannot hold because the event already happened, and the event left a record that cannot be erased. Think about what your life felt like during the full period this operation was active against you. Every door that should have opened had extra resistance behind it. Every blessing that was moving toward you encountered interference before it could arrive. Every significant relationship in your life had friction introduced into it from an external source. Every resource that was supposed to reach you seemed to leak somewhere along the way before it got to you. Progress that should have been smooth felt like you were walking through something dense and resistant without knowing exactly why. You were not falling short because you lacked what was needed. You were operating against an artificially generated resistance the entire time. You were doing the work of building your life while simultaneously pushing through deliberate obstruction that you could feel but could not always name. It took more out of you than the same effort on a clear path would have required. It wore on you in ways that were real, cumulative, and sometimes made you question whether you were the problem. You were not the problem, you were the target. That resistance is gone now. The source of the interference has collapsed. The friction being generated inside your most important relationships is losing the fuel that sustained it. The obstruction on your doors is lifting in real time. The acceleration is fast, faster than you expect, faster than the people watching you expect. Because the momentum built up during the season of resistance does not disappear when the resistance does. It transfers forward. Every day you kept moving when it was hard. Every choice you made to keep building when every step felt heavier than it should have. All of that accumulated force is now carrying you into what is opening. Do not be surprised when things start moving at a pace that feels almost disorienting. Do not talk yourself out of the speed of your own breakthrough. You earned every bit of it. The things that were most heavily blocked, the legacy, the inheritance, the deep foundational purposes of your life that represented the biggest threat to what your adversaries were trying to accomplish, those specifically are about to move in ways you have been waiting a long time to see. Your gifts were specifically targeted, not incidentally, deliberately. The people behind this operation understood that a chosen one, operating with full spiritual clarity, is extraordinarily difficult to reach with dark intent. Your discernment catches things before they land. Your intuition reroutes you around traps before you are even consciously aware they are there. Your sensitivity to energy alerts you to the presence of hostile forces before those forces can position themselves effectively. If your gifts were fully intact and fully active, the operation had very little chance of succeeding. So they went for your clarity first. They worked to cloud your perception, to introduce so much internal noise and confusion that your own inner knowing would start to feel unreliable to you, to make you second-guess the very instincts that were designed to protect you, to convince you that the alarm your spirit was sounding was just anxiety or paranoia or a tendency toward overthinking. Some of that interference worked in the short term. There were periods during all of this where your clarity felt dimmer than usual, where you questioned yourself more than the situation warranted, where you felt disconnected from the sharp, clean knowing that is normally one of your most reliable qualities. That disorientation was not your failure. It was the direct effect of targeted interference with your perception. But here is what no level of external interference can actually accomplish. It can dim the signal. It cannot cut the line. Your gifts are not a learned skill that dissolves under sustained external pressure. They are woven into the original design of who you are. They existed before you understood how to name them. They were operating in your life before you consciously knew how to access them. And throughout this entire season, even in your most confused and doubting moments, your gifts did not stop functioning. Every move you made during this season that you could not fully explain at the time but turned out to be exactly right, that was your gifts working under fire. Every time you felt pulled away from something and followed that pull, only to understand later why it mattered, that was your gifts working under fire. Every moment of sudden clarity that cut through all the noise and gave you precisely what you needed at precisely the right time, that was your gifts working under fire. And what a gift does under sustained pressure is not weaken. It gets precise. It gets strong. It gets harder to fool and faster to respond. You come out of this season more gifted than you entered it. The very interference that was designed to neutralize your spiritual perception inadvertently developed it into something more refined, more accurate, and more thoroughly your own than comfortable circumstances could ever have produced. The attack on your gifts made your gifts more powerful. Receive that fully. Step back from your personal experience for a moment and look at what has just been demonstrated at the level of principle. There is no version of what happened where you lose. There is no configuration of dark forces, coordinated human intention, ritualistic work, or sustained malicious investment that is capable of overriding the covering assigned to a chosen one whose destiny operates at a level above what any dark operation can reach. Your adversaries were not ultimately fighting you. They were fighting the authority that assigned you, and they did not have clearance for that level. They could not go where they would have needed to go to interrupt what had been set in motion for your life. What they had access to was the realm of whispers and interference and paid practitioners, and all of those things can create real disruption in the short term. None of them carry the authority to alter what has been sealed at a level above them. Watch what happened when the full force of everything assembled against you was committed to the ritual, when they escalated all the way to the edge of what they were capable of and launched it as one coordinated action. The very thing they weaponized became the instrument of their own accounting. The people they gathered became the witnesses to their own exposure. The event they organized became the scene from which they cannot now separate their names. The practitioner they paid could not shield them from what came back, because what came back was authorized at a level that practitioner had no relationship with and no defense against. Every dark thing built against you became evidence of what was being done. Every layer of secrecy became a layer that now has to be accounted for. Every resource spent on the operation is now a documented investment in something that failed publicly and is in the process of being fully exposed. This is not coincidence. This is the law, and the law does not require your involvement to execute itself. It runs on its own. It always has, and it ran its full course at that gathering while you were somewhere else living your life, continuing to build, healing and moving forward exactly the way you were designed to move. The thing they wanted from you was your gift. Your gift is what made you a target. Your gift being targeted is what activated the ancestral protection. The ancestral protection is what intercepted the ritual. The interception is what produced the collapse. The collapse is what created the witnesses. The witnesses are what is now producing the public exposure, and the public exposure is what is dismantling the last of the operation they built and clearing the path in front of you permanently. Your gift, the thing they envied, the thing they tried to neutralize, the thing they built an entire operation to suppress and steal. That gift is the reason every single step of what they did ended up serving your destiny instead of ending it. They were never fighting you. They were unknowingly building your next level while falling headfirst into it themselves. You are still here, gifted, covered, protected by something ancient and unbreakable that never left your side for a single moment of this entire season. You are moving now into everything that was sealed for you before any of this began. You are walking toward an inheritance that no operation, no ritual, no gathering, no practitioner, and no coalition of jealous intention could touch, because it was never within their jurisdiction to begin with. Walk like you know that. Build like you know that. Move like someone who just watched an entire operation built to stop you, collapse on the people who built it, while you kept going, because that is exactly what happened. Their trouble returned upon their own heads. Their violent dealings came down upon their own crowns. That is not a wish. That is not even a prayer. That is a law that has already executed itself. And chosen one, your only job now is to receive what opens next. Go build what they were so afraid of you building.